much time, I'll I'm audible, sir?
Yeah.
Yeah. So even though, sir, I mean, in our fraternity and especially at the Association of Corporate Advisors, you don't need an introduction, but still, I'll, for the formality, I'll introduce you. S.S. Gupta ji acquired his CA qualification in 1973 at a very early age of 19, securing first rank in Eastern Region in CA final examination. He thereafter worked as Vice President Finance with the AV Birla Group. He established S. Swaroop and Company in 1984 and over the years has gained immense experience and expertise in income tax. He provides expert consultancy on income tax matters to various leading chartered accountants and advocates. He is a renowned expert in the field of taxation. He regularly represents his clients before the ITAT and CIT appeals. He has represented cases in various tribunals across the country. Owing to his expertise and experience, he is a regular speaker in various... Ashok Samanta ji, I would request you to please... Sorry. Yeah. Owing to his expertise and experience, he is a regular speaker in various seminars and symposiums organized by various industry bodies, chambers of commerce and ICAI. He has addressed in Thailand, Singapore, Nepal on topics like double taxation avoidance agreement. Some of his professional associations and affiliations are: he is a co-opted member of the Direct Tax Committee of ICAI for 2015-16. He is a life member of ACAE. He is Senior Vice President of ACAE for 1920. Life member of DTPA VIP. He is a member of Merchant Chamber of Commerce, Kolkata. He has traveled extensively around the globe. And sir was there in the budget session where, as soon as the budget ended, he gave his views for, half an hour. Ki budget mein kya tha, nahi tha. It was a very, very, good session for that half an hour. I request sir to take over the proceedings from now. And guys, because it is a group discussion, I request all the members out here to, participate, ask your questions, and, if you can add in your points, it'll be a really helpful discussion, a very healthy discussion. Thank you so much, and over to you, sir.
Good evening, friends, members of ACAE, participants, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Priyank Singhi and other dignitaries. Thanks for giving me this opportunity to share with you my understanding about the budget proposals. First of all, I would try to confess and admit that even till now, I have not been able to go through 100% of the budgetary changes in view of certain time limitations at my end, but still I have tried to update myself on some important changes which, according to me, should be discussed in a fraternity of our professional brothers. Friends, starting with some of the basic features of this budget is, first of all, it has so many retrospective amendments. When this government, initially the first budget which was presented by late Mr. Arun Jaitley, then there was a categorical statement made policy statement made in the budget speech that we do not believe in changing the laws retrospectively, but with greatest of respect, since the year one till now, in each and every budget, there are retrospective amendments, and even in this budget, there are several retrospective amendments. So one way we will have to go through and understand the implications of those retrospective amendments. Then, friends, another very important thing which I feel is that we are always talking about the accountability of the revenue officers for for actions which have been done by them, which are contrary to the statutory intentions or contrary to the legislative provisions or contrary to the settled judicial principles. Well, friends, I would once again, in each of my every speech, I read a section which always gives a statutory recognition and protection to the revenue officers. That is section 293. It is a 4-line section. I would like to read it for the benefit of all of us. Bar of suits in civil courts. No suit shall be brought in any civil court to set aside or modify any proceeding taken or order made under this act, and no prosecution, suit or other proceeding shall lie against the government or any officer of the government for anything in good faith done or intended to be done under this act. Friend, this is one provision which I had to face its wrath before Honorable Bombay High Court in one of my clients' cases, where though the actions of the revenue in that particular case in acquiring one immovable property under the erstwhile provisions were patently illegal and contrary to the provisions, and we had challenged and we had pleaded for an action against the revenue officers, but relying on 293, we were denied and very recently, 3 days back also, there is a decision reported under 293, wherein similar views have been expressed. Coming to tax rates, friends, tax rates for the normal taxation as per the applicable rates, slab rates, or tax rates applicable to different entities, or taxation rates as per those concessional provisions which were announced by in the year 2019-20, mid-1920, or by way of 115 BAA and BAB and BAD and BAC, those remain the same. And another thing is severity practice of issuing circulars after the amendments or after the decisions have been rendered by various high courts and Supreme Court. That is a healthy practice. In so many cases, severity has come out with circulars that after this decision, that they advise that the department has accepted these decisions and the revenue should not file appeals, or if already they have filed certain appeals on these grounds, then that should be withdrawn. Such circulars, according to me, have been issued in relation to 222E, in relation to 43B, in relation to a couple of other sections. This is a healthy practice, according to me. And regarding 148 notices, not much has been stated in this budget, but 148 notices, the matter is more or less settled at rest by these decisions of 4 high courts: Allahabad High Court in the case of Ashok Agarwal, then Rajasthan High Court in the case of BPIP Infra, then Delhi High Court in the case of Manmohan Kohli. So these decisions have, at least people are asking a question, sir, as to what happens in case of assessees who have not gone into by way of writs against the notices issued under 148. Friends, when the initial writ petitions were decided by these courts, they stayed the proceedings. But when these final orders are passed, they have narrated the principles that the notices issued on or after 1st April 21 under the amended provisions of without following the amended provisions of 147 and 148 and 148A are void ab initio. Those notices have been quashed, and the reliance of the revenue department on the extension notifications dated 31st of March 1 and 27th of April, the second extension notifications. In those 2 notifications, there were 2 explanations on which heavy reliance was placed on behalf of the revenue, that this permits the revenue department to extend the issuance of notice, and therefore these notices issued are valid. So those 2 extension notifications have also been held in all these decisions to be ultra voice and ab initio void. And the one adverse decision of the Chhattisgarh High Court in the case of Palak Katuja, that decision also has been distinguished and discussed and considered in all these decisions. Therefore, I mean, in my humble submission, now that we have the final decisions of these four high courts laying down the ratios and principles, I think now a reliance can be made before the assessing officer or before the appellate authorities. And according to me, the matter should be decided in accordance with the principles and ratios which have been laid down in these decisions.
So, sir, I'll just come in. I'm sorry to interrupt. So, as per you, sir, what I mean, what we as professionals should do is that, the notices that we've received for Section 148, we should again go back to the assessee, cite the Calcutta High Court judgment, and say that, this is what the Calcutta High Court has said. And, I mean,
Mr. Priyank, that is an option available to the SSC because many SSCs do not want to move to High Court in the writ petition. So, of course, they will have to go. I mean, if the assessing officer does not agree, then the only option left is to go by way of an appeal. And when you go in appeal, there is likely to be a requirement of depositing 20% of the tax which have been levied on account of the proposed additions made under Section 147 and 148 assessment. So those aspects have to be considered and take a conscious decision. On the contrary, there is an option for going into by way of writ also, by way of petition for condonation of delay, that in view of these decisions rendered, now we are coming with a petition for condonation of delay. So both these, so one will have to take a call depending upon case to case. But the impact of the earlier decisions was SSC specific. That was not a decision in REM. Now these decisions which have been finally laid down by, I think they have a persuasive value because they have laid down the principles. They are talking about the legality and validity of the notices issued on or after 1421 without following the amended provisions and the procedure of 148A. So that is my submission. And regarding
is it just the stubbornness of the department that they are not willing to listen to the courts also, that even though the courts have said that it is void, they're still fighting it out?
Well, Mr. Priyank, I mean, we have been seeing these things in our day-to-day practice and in our practical experience. I mean, more enthusiastic and revenue-minded officials at times do not even adhere to the jurisdictional tribunal or the jurisdictional Calcutta High Court decisions. Recently, I was handling a case. Even today only, I argued one case that was in relation to allowability of PF deductions, employees' contribution to PF, which was paid beyond the due dates as per the respective welfare statutes. But then Calcutta High Court in the case of Vijayasree Limited has already taken a view wherein it has been held that even if it is employees' contribution, but if it has been, and even though it has been paid beyond the due dates specifying in the PF legislation, but before the due date under 139(1), Calcutta High Court in Vijayasree Limited has categorically held that it should be, it cannot be disallowed. There cannot be any addition relying on 3615A or 22410. Now, when the 263 notice came to us by giving this show cause notice, we replied to the commissioner and relied on this Vijayasree Limited Calcutta High Court decision. With greatest respect, the learned CIT did not even discuss that decision in his order under 263. So we had to travel to tribunal. This morning only I was arguing before the tribunal, and the honorable members were pleased to accept my submissions. I reasonably hope that the matter should be in favor of the SSC. Well, let's wait for the order. But I have my reasonable hopes. There are plethora of decisions rendered by Rajasthan High Court in the case of Rajasthan State Warehousing Corporation, then Calcutta High Court in the case of Vijayasree Limited, and a number of tribunal decisions which have held in favor of the SSC. That this, and then this amendment which was carried out by Finance Act 21 by inserting two explanations, one to 43B and another to 3615A. Now, those explanations have been so worded as if those explanations are retrospectively. They say shall be deemed and as if it was always. But how to read those amendments. Now you will have to go into the Supreme Court decision in the case of Vatika Township, and Vatika Township say to even if the explanation or the amendment is so worded that it gives a feeling or it gives a meaning as if it is retrospectively applicable, you need to read the memorandum explaining the provisions of the finance bill. And when you read the memorandum of explaining provisions of the finance bill of finance at 21 for these two amendments, there it has been specifically stated that these provisions are applicable with reference to with effect from 1st April 21 and assessment year 21-22 onwards. So already Calcutta Tribunal in the case of Lumina Industries has expressed a similar view, and they have relied on this Vijayashree Limited. So what I am trying to submit, jo aapne bola ki authorities do not accept the verdict or the decision, well, that is why I narrated that 293, that their power, there is no accountability on the part of the revenue officers. But a good practice which has been started by this government is that now they have started coming out with circulars, severity circulars, where specifically it is being mentioned that no appeal should be filed on these additions and these disallowances or additions which have been upheld by High Court or Supreme Court, and wherever appeals have been filed, they should be withdrawn. So I think then अभी एक ये Aqua Supreme Court का decision है, इसमें भी retrospective amendment के लिए very important observations have been made by Honorable Supreme Court. A retrospective provision in a tax act, which is, they always say, for removal of doubts in the explanations or amendments, which is for removal of doubts, cannot be presumed to be retrospective, even where such language is used, if it alters or changes law as it earlier stood. So अगर वो पूरा law ही change हो जाता है, then retrospectivity cannot be read into. Retrospectivity has to be specifically, the legislature has a power to come out with retrospective amendments, but that has to be specific, that has to be clearly stated, legislated accordingly. So that was all about the retrospective amendments. Now friends, coming to certain other proposals of this Finance Bill 22, a very important amendment, a very important new proposal has been made by inserting section 139(8) capital A, that is updated income tax return. Friends, as per the existing provisions, a return can be filed under section 139(1), that is within the due date as permitted for the respective assessees. Thereafter, the returns can be filed under section 139(4), that is belated returns. As per the existing provisions, such returns can be filed up to within the same assessment year, at least 3 months before the end of the relevant assessment year, that is up to 31st of December, such belated returns can be filed. And then returns can be filed under 139(4), that is a return filed under 139(1) or 139(4) if there is some mistake or some omissions or some mistakes have been committed, then you can make a revision of your return under 139(5). But the time limit for furnishing 139(5) is also 3 months before the end of the relevant assessment year, that is 31st of December. तो अभी आप देखिए, for a non-tax audit assessee or a non-audit assessee, the due date for filing of the return is 31st of July. और उनको अपना return file करना है 139(4) या 139(5), only 5 months time they get. Coming to the audit assessee, limited companies or tax audit assessees of non-limited companies cases or other audits as per Income Tax Act, they are given the time to furnish the return by 31st of October. Now 31st of October से 31st of December में the time available is only 2 months. Transfer pricing cases, the time limit for furnishing the return audit and furnishing the return is 30th of November. So they get only 1 month's time. Now the government has given another avenue to file an updated tax return by inserting section 139(8) capital A. So उसमें you are given a time of 2 years from the end of the relevant assessment year. Like return for the assessment year 22-23, the as per the 139.8A, those returns can be updated till 31st of March 2025, because end of the relevant assessment year is 31st March 23, और उसके 2 साल के बाद तक हम ये relevant assessment year के फाइल कर सकते हैं. Now let us discuss how does this updated tax returns, what are the provisions, what are the implications. Now any person, whether he has this facility of permitting to file an updated tax return is available to those assessees who have furnished their return under 139(1), 4 or 5, and also those assessees who have never furnished their returns. Even a non-filer, even a new assessee can furnish the updated tax return under section 139(8)(a). Now, there are certain restrictions, there are certain circumstances, there are certain conditions wherein an updated tax return cannot be filed. What are those situations? 139(8)(a) shall not apply if the updated return is a loss return. So loss return you cannot file 139(8)(a), or it has the effect of reducing the total tax liability. If the tax liability which was as per 139(1), 4 or 5 X figure, so the updated tax return cannot reduce that tax liability. Then, or it results into a refund. You cannot, by virtue of filing an 139(8)(a), you cannot come with a refund claim that which you earlier did not have, or increasing the refund which was there as per 139(1), 4 or 5. So, or it results in a refund or increases the refund due. So, plus the updated return cannot be filed in the case of search cases or requisition cases, 132 or 132 capital A cases. If proceedings for the relevant assessment year have been initiated under 132 or requisition proceedings under 132A, you cannot come with the updated tax returns. Similarly, if a survey has been conducted in your case for the relevant assessment year, except TDS survey, if a survey under 133 capital A within bracket 2 capital A, that is a TDS survey, that is not a disqualification. There you can come and utilize this 139(8)(a) if you want. And if there is a notice has been issued to the assessee that any asset seized under 132 or requisition under 132A from any other person, there is a search in the premises of A, and there they recover or seize certain assets or valuable article or thing relating to A, then in case of A assessee, A is debarred from coming to 139(8)(a), because in case of a search or seizure in other case, something related to you have been found there. Therefore, you are not able to utilize or take benefit of 139(8)(a). And similarly, in case of a search in the case of any other person, if certain documents, if certain evidences are seized or requisitioned, and those documents or evidences relate to third person, that third person is debarred from coming under 139(8)(a). Or if in the certain books of accounts or documents are seized wherein certain information is there which relate to you, that is also a condition under which that third person or that entity in relation to whom those information are there, they are debarred from coming to 139(8)(a). Then friends, this provision is for the year of search, requisition or survey and 2 preceding years. Now, there cannot be an updated return if you have already filed an updated return for a particular year. That means for a year for which you have already filed an updated return, you cannot file a second updated return for that year. But for other years, for other assessment years within that permitted time of 2 years from the end of the relevant assessment year, you can always file. Then another condition is that any proceeding for assessment which is disqualifying you to file the updated return is that if there is any proceeding for assessment or reassessment or recomputation or revision is pending, Like if notice under 143(2) has been issued, if a notice under 147 or 148 has been issued, or 263 has been issued, or 154 has been issued. So under these circumstances, for the years for which these notices are issued, you are debarred from coming under 139(8)(a). And such cases are completed, or such cases are completed for a year, where these provision notices have been issued and cases are complete. There also you cannot come under 139(8)(a). Then another disqualification is if the assessing officer is having information in respect of such person under PMLA Act, Prevention of Money Laundering Act, under the Black Money Act 2015, or under the Benami Act 1988, or under the Smugglers and Foreign Exchange Manipulators Act 1976. And such information is communicated to the SSE before he or she files its return under 139(8)(a). Before filing of the return, if there is some information under these four enactments, which is of adversarial nature, and that information is communicated to the SSE, then also he cannot come under this 139(8)(a). And another disqualification is if there is any information for the relevant assessment year received from the received under an agreement under 90 and 90 capital A. Friends, for the purposes of exchange of information, Government of India has understanding and agreements with various countries as per the double taxation avoidance agreements and as per other agreements entered into with the respective countries. Now, because of exchange of information agreements, if there is an information received under 90 or 90 capital A, so that has been communicated to the SSE before filing of a return, so that also becomes a disqualification. Then if prosecution has been initiated before filing of the return as per the provisions of the Income Tax Act, and if finally if the SSE is a person or the SSE belongs to a class of persons which have been notified by the central government by for the purposes of these 139(8)(a) that they are debarred from filing the income tax returns. So that is notified persons. Then finally it says that 139(8)(a) returns have to be accompanied by the payment of self-assessment tax, and for that they are coming out with a specific provision on the lines of 140 capital A. Here it is 140 capital B. And a question which will come into our mind as to what are the additional tax or what is the additional interest which we are to pay for the purposes of this 139(8)(a). Now, as we have already stated that this 139(8)(a) can be filed for by those SSEs who have already furnished their return under 139(1), 4 and 5, or a person who has never furnished a return. Therefore, the calculation of tax in both these situations will differ. So far as persons who have already furnished their returns under those provisions, the tax due has to be paid, interest and fee payable for late filing of the return, and fee payable for interest payable for non-payment of advance tax, and interest for delayed in furnishing the return. So 234A, 234B, 234C, and fees as per 234F have to be paid, plus additional tax. Now, tax payable has to be calculated by giving you the credits of advance tax which you already paid, TDS or TCS which have been deducted and the relevant income being offered, relief under section 89, relief under section 90 or 90 capital A, 91 and 90 capital A, and MAT credit or AMT credit as per 115 JAA or 115 JD. So the updated tax return has to be accompanied by proof of payment of tax, additional tax, interest and fee. And similarly for those SSEs who are filed their return under 139(4) and 5, in their case, even the credit of self-assessment tax paid by them with their original returns or with their returns under 139(1), 4 and 5, that credit will also be given. And this tax shall be increased by the amount of refund, if any, In case of previously assessed assessees, there might be that they have been given certain refunds as per the earlier assessments or earlier orders or earlier processing of returns. Now, those refunds which have been made shall also be added to the tax liability. Now, your final question is, what is the amount of additional tax and interest which is to be paid under 139(8)(a)? Now, the law has been set, two categories of taxation rates have been provided. That if you furnish your return under updated tax return within 1 year from the end of the relevant assessment year, then it is 25% of the tax and interest on the additional income. If the return is filed within a period of 12 months to 24 months from the end of the relevant assessment year, then the additional tax is 50% of the tax and interest due on the additional income. Now, friends, for the purposes of calculating the tax under 234B, you need to calculate the assessed tax. Now, assessed tax for the purposes of 139(8)(a), how it has to be calculated? That is to be calculated by considering the tax paid under 140(A), that is with the earlier return, self-assessment tax already paid with the earlier return. Then TDS, TCS not claimed in the earlier return, now you are claiming and offering the relevant income also in the additional income. Relief under section 90 or 91 not claimed in the earlier return, relief under 90 capital A. कुछ बोल रहे हैं?
नहीं ठीक.
Okay. Relief under section 90A not claimed in the earlier return, and MAT credit under section 115 JAA and JD not claimed in the earlier return. And where no earlier return has been furnished, 234A is to be calculated on the income as per return under 139(8)(a) return. And also 234C, which is for deferment of advance tax, is to be calculated on the income as per the return income under 139(8)(a). Friends, for calculating the additional tax and interest shall be calculated on the basis of interest as per 139(8)(a) as reduced by interest as per 139(1), 4 or 5 returns which you have already furnished and paid. Friends, some people or some tax experts have stated that this is nothing but a voluntary disclosure scheme. Friends, as I told you, since this is going to remain in the statute book year after year, and for any assessment year, for every assessment year, you are given this facility. It's not that once in lifetime you are getting this. Now onwards, in addition to 139(1), 139(4) and 5, you will have 139(8)(a) also. So according to me, it is not a voluntary disclosure scheme. Now it is part of the scheme of the Income Tax Act, wherein the facility has been provided that up to 2 years from the end of the relevant assessment year, you can update your income tax return by going on this, by making calculations and furnishing the return in the manner and form which is to be prescribed. I think that was about.
I had a small question over here, sir.
Please.
So, sir, I mean, do you think that 139(8)(a), I mean, so if someone has not filed his return, right? What should you do? Should he opt for 139(8)(a), or should he, go to the AO and ask him to issue 142(1) notice? I mean, from the taxation point of view, what would you think will be beneficial to the SSA, considering that there is 50% extra tax?
Yeah. If you have time limit to furnish your return available under 139(4), then you should definitely go under 139(4) by way of belated returns, because then you are not liable to pay this additional tax and additional interest. So अगर 139(4) का मेरे पास टाइम है तो मेरे को उसमें जाना चाहिए. Otherwise, I have no option but to go under 139(8)(a), because अगर 139(4) का टाइम लिमिट खत्म हो गया है, then the department cannot come under 142(1) and ask you to furnish a return, because they will be also losing their revenue, na?
Right.
तो मेरे हिसाब से तो उसमें आपको 139(8)(a) में ही जाना पड़ेगा अगर टाइम टू फर्निश जस्ट बिलेटेड रिटर्न दिसंबर अगर पार हो गया है एज पर द एग्जिस्टिंग प्रोविजंस, देन द ओनली ऑप्शन इज टू गो अंडर 139(8)(a).
एक्चुअली 1920 के केसेस में जिसका भी रिटर्न पेंडिंग है उसके लिए यही ऑप्शन है, 139(8)(a) इज द ओनली ऑप्शन. Right.
At least the government has narrated that this is the additional burden you are going to have in case you have missed on 139.4 date.
Right. Right.
That is
Right.
the option.
Thank you, sir.
Now, coming to very important amendments in section 40AII, that is disallowability of education cess in the computation of your income from business or profession. Friends, we will have to go into the history of this 40AII, how it started, how people started making a claim. When 40AII was brought into the statute book in the year 67, then, when it was like we have this budgetary, now we are discussing Finance Bill 22. When Finance Bill was there, when it was proposed, then as per 40AII, a sum paid on account of rate or tax or cess levied on the profits and gains. That was the proposal in the Finance Bill. But when the Finance Bill was finally debated and converted into Finance Act, then the word cess was omitted from the provisions, and the 40A2 was enacted by saying, as per section 40AII, any sum paid on account of rate or tax. There was no mention of the word cess, which was finding place in original Finance Bill of that particular year when this section was first enacted in the Income Tax Act. So, and then in the same year, there was a severity circular which was issued, which is dated 18/5/1967, wherein the severity clearly stated that the cess which is being disallowed or which is not being allowed by relying on this 40A2 is contrary to the provisions, and that circular specifically stated that such disallowances should not be made. As per 40A2, this is to be allowed. Now, thereafter, a decision was rendered by the Honorable Bombay High Court in the year 2019, or rather in the year 2020, according to me. That was in the case of Sesa Goa Limited, 107taxman.com. In that decision, Bombay High Court, relying on that severity circular dated 67 and relying on these provisions of Finance Bill and the Finance Act, wherein this 40A2 was enacted, they expressly stated that this is to be allowed as a deduction. And exactly parallel view or similar view was taken prior to rendition of the Sesa Goa Limited in an unreported decision in the case of Chambal Fertilizers. That was decision rendered on July 2018, whereas Rajasthan High Court also, relying on that severity circular of 67 and relying on this, and it was also argued before the tribunals after these two decisions and severity circular that the legislature, wherever it wanted to apply certain provisions to cess, have inserted. Like if you look at the provisions of 43B, which deals with allowability of statutory payments. Now the 43B subsection 1 deals with any tax, duty, cess or fee, whatever name called. So the word cess is included there. Whereas when you read 40A small 2, there they have said any sum paid on account of rate or tax. So the word cess is not there. So people argued before the tribunals also in some of the cases that when cess, they wanted to have some treatment, it has been mentioned in 43B. When they don't want cess to be disallowed as income tax, it is not mentioned in 48.2. So based on these observations, across the country, various tribunals, various high courts have allowed the deduction of income from the computation of income tax. Then what was cited in these decisions by the various tribunals, Calcutta Tribunal in a number of decisions, not one, number of decisions, have followed by Sesa Goa and this Chambal Fertilizer and that severity circular of 67 and allowed the deduction of education cess in the computation of business income. It is only in the month of October 21, to be precise, an order dated 26th October 2021 in the case of Kanodia Chemical and Industries Limited, that the Calcutta Tribunal took a contrary view, a contrary stand to what I mean, as compared to the earlier decisions rendered by Calcutta Tribunal, by not following Bombay High Court decision in the case of Sesa Goa or Chambal Fertilizer, not following the CBDT circular of 2006, yeah, this 1967, 18567 to be precise. Now, this decision should be discussed. Why did the Calcutta Tribunal did not follow the earlier decisions of its own Calcutta Tribunal, or why of Bombay High Court or Rajasthan High Court? They relied on a decision of the Honorable Supreme Court in the case of K. Srinivasan, which is reported in 83 ITR page 346 Supreme Court. Now, any decision of any court or any tribunal should be understood and read with reference to the question or issue which was before the tribunal. And observations here or there in the body of the order does not make the principles or ratio which have been deliberated thereon. The question before the Honorable Supreme Court in K. Srinivasan case was that whether the surcharge is a surcharge or additional surcharge is part of the income tax. That was the issue which the Supreme Court had to decide. And the Supreme Court in that decision took a view that surcharge or additional surcharge is nothing but part of income tax, but it is a tax. Now, in income tax, there was never a levy of education cess till before Finance Act 2004. It was for the first time the Finance Act 2004 came out with a levy of education cess of 2%. And if you read the memorandum explaining the provisions of the Finance Act 2004, there they have stated that a levy of 2% cess by calling it as an additional surcharge, right? Now, additional surcharge and the nature of additional surcharge has been explained by K. Srinivasan's case of Supreme Court, that it is nothing but part of tax. Then again, Finance Act 11 also levied additional surcharge to be called education cess. So Finance Act 2004, Finance Act 2011, and by going into the principles decided by Supreme Court in K. Srinivasan case, a conjoint reading of all these three things or three articles clearly suggests that education cess is nothing but additional surcharge, and additional surcharge is nothing but tax. Therefore, there is no requirement to mention anything in addition to tax in 48(2). और सर जब 48(2) लेजिस्लेट हुआ था उस समय इनकम टैक्स में कोई सेस नहीं था. Why I tell you why they have done, ये जो जब फाइनेंस बिल finally enact hota hai, there is a debate in the parliament when these amendments of changes are discussed or considered. I have been able to lay my hands into the copies of those debates as to what were the questions raised, what were the issue raised, what is the reply. At that time, Honorable Morarji Desai was the finance minister. तो उन्होंने जब वो सेस वर्ड हटाया था जो ओरिजिनली फाइनेंस बिल में था और एक्ट में नहीं आया, उस समय लोगों का ये ऑब्जेक्शन था कि सर सेस इज पेड अंडर एक्साइज लेजिस्लेशन, सेस इज पेड अंडर द सेल टैक्स लेजिस्लेशन. सो इनडायरेक्ट वेरियस लेवीज एंड वेरियस fees or whether various licenses fees, various enactments depending upon the nature of business to which a particular enactment is applicable, cess is to be paid. So those cess is nothing but in the form of an indirect tax. तो अगर सर्विस टैक्स पे कोई सेस है तो अलाउबल है, सेल टैक्स में कोई सेस है तो अलाउबल है, एक्साइज ड्यूटी में कोई सेस है तो अलाउबल है, जीएसटी पे कोई सेस है तो अलाउबल है. Because of these arguments, that finally when it was enacted the word cess was taken away. People apprehended कि अगर आप cess यहाँ रख देंगे तो हमारी ये cess जो हमारी legitimate deductible है वो नहीं अलाउ होगी. तो वो चीजें बॉम्बे हाई कोर्ट के डिसीजन में तो वो चीजें नहीं है. So Calcutta Tribunal in the case of Kanodia Chemical had stated that when this Bombay High Court and when Rajasthan High Court decisions were rendered, the K. Srinivasan's decision the provisions of Finance Act 2004, the provisions of Finance Act 2011 were not brought to the notice of Honorable Bombay High Court or Rajasthan High Court. Therefore, by ignoring the decisions of K. Srinivasan of Supreme Court, a decision has been rendered by Bombay High Court and Rajasthan High Court, and therefore these decisions rendered by Bombay High Court and Rajasthan High Court is nothing but per incurium. Friends, a curiosity might arise among the minds of my friends as to what is a per incurium decision. The House of Lords has stated that a per incurium decision is one which is rendered by ignoring the earlier decision of the coordinate bench. अगर Bombay High Court में कोई earlier Bombay High Court का decision which is contrary to what you are deciding now, so you should discuss that earlier decision and distinguish it or give your reasons why you are taking a different view. So they say, or a decision has been rendered by ignoring the decision of the House of Lords or the apex court or Supreme Court, so far as it is in India, or a decision has been rendered by ignoring the statutory provisions which have a statutory force, or ignoring the rules which have got a statutory force. So they said the decisions rendered by Bombay and Rajasthan High Court by ignoring K. Srinivasan's decision is nothing, by wherein neither K. Srinivasan was discussed and cited, nor 2004 Finance Act was discussed and cited, nor 2011 Finance Act was discussed and cited. Therefore, that is not. And it has been judicially held that per incurium decisions do not have a force of law. Therefore, now they have stated that made a retrospective amendment effective 1st April 5, that is from 1st April assessment year 5-6, that any education cess will not be or cannot be allowed as a deduction in the computation of your income from business. Now, friends, a question or an issue will arise as to what happens to those cases where this has already been allowed by the honorable tribunals or honorable Bombay High Court or honorable Rajasthan High Court in the cases which has already come. Now, cases will subsequently come which are now to be decided. They will definitely take these amended provisions into account before taking a view in favor or against the SSE. Friends, with respect, I think when the matter was decided, now question is whether 154 would lie, whether 263 would lie, or whether 147 proceedings would lie. Friends, abhi jo scheme of 148 or 147 hai, there they have stated that if in case of an information in possession of the assessing officer, the assessments can be subject to 148 notice by following the procedure of 148 capital A. Now, information in possession of the assessing officer has been stated to be on the basis of risk management strategy formulated by the CBDT and information flagged in the case of the SSE. We will now, the expression flagged has already been removed, proposed to be removed by these proposals of the Finance Act 22. But on the basis of risk management strategy, now CBDT, when it comes out with its risk management strategy, will definitely say that if certain amendments have been made with retrospective effect, that will become a cause. So in my submission, I for one strongly feel that this will constitute nothing but information, and the risk management strategy of the CBDT is likely to have this. They will also say if a view has been taken contrary to the decisions of the Supreme Court, and here this Kanodia Chemicals is relying on the Supreme Court decision of K. Srinivasan to disallow this claim of education cess. Therefore, those completed cases are also likely to be affected according to me. But we will have to wait, and a good amount of litigation will be there on those this thing. Though there are reported decisions that in case of a on the principles of impossibility of performance, even if there is a subsequent amendments with retrospective effect, you cannot come with 154 or 263 or this. that was in relation to, like, say, TDS provisions. If there is a liability to deduct, TDS was not there in the relevant year. But subsequently, some amendments have been made with retrospective effect to. But sir, TDS I cannot anticipate or visualize that after 2 years there will be a retrospective amendment. TDS liability arises on payment or credit, whichever is earlier. When I made the payment, I acted in accordance with law. If subsequently you come out with certain retrospective amendments, so that is not the case here. Here, the case of the revenue, in the case of Kanodia Chemicals decision, and the entire Kanodia Chemicals decision of the Honorable Calcutta Tribunal is discussed in the memorandum explaining provisions of the finance bill, running in 2-3 pages. So therefore, this makes a very interesting reading according to me. One should read it properly, and one should not make an aggressive tax planning for the purpose of claim of expenditure or deductions or allowances which are contrary to the legislative intent. That was all about 48.2 according to me.
So, sir, in your opinion, I mean, just to summarize, the 50 lakh, the 50 lakh ceiling and all those things will not be of any value, any essence?
No, they will have all value. Sir, आप जो बोल रहे हैं, अभी 147 का स्कोप भी इन्होंने बढ़ा दिया है. Let me tell you where it will fall. Let me tell you, पहले उसको ही ले लेते हैं. 147 में भी जो इन्होंने पहले जो इनके अर्ली एग्जिस्टिंग प्रोविजंस में जो था, उससे इस बार the scope has been enhanced drastically. Now, what will constitute information in possession of the assessing officer has been enhanced. Sir, पहले क्या था? I will just take you to this. See, as per the existing 149, no notice under 147 can be issued more than 3 years from the end of the relevant assessment year. And then the clause B said that in case of an evidence in the possession of the SSE, in the possession of the AO, where the likely escapement is in excess of 50 lakhs of rupees, then this could be 3 to 10 years. But then they had stated that 50 lakhs that 10 to 50 lakhs must be represented in the form of assets. That was these are the existing provisions. अभी इन्होंने क्या बोल दिया है कि if the AO has, now they have said represented in the form of any asset. In addition, they have enhanced it, represented in the form of expenditure in respect of a transaction or in relation to an event or occasion. So, last year मैंने बोला था, suppose you have made a marriage in the family by spending 5 crores of rupees in between 3 to 10 years, and उसका कोई डायरी या एविडेंस एओ के हाथ लग गया, then he could not have come to you because that is consumed, that is eaten. No evidence of that is not represented in the form of an asset. Or you have taken your family for a world tour for a month and spent, say, 2 crore of rupees or 3 crore of rupees, and it is not found recorded in your books of accounts, but evidences have been found by the assessing officer. So वहाँ भी, since it was not represented in the form of an asset, this could not have been done. Now they have plugged that this thing. अभी तो डर लगता है सर कि आप लोग, मतलब हम लोग कुछ चीज बोले तो before we tell our friends and associates or clients, the matter reaches to the authorities, and then there is. Now ये always होता है. Whenever you plan a thing, whenever you devise a way to save taxes, to avoid payment of taxes as per the statutory provisions, बाद में उसको plug करके change कर लिया जाता है. Now it says represented in the form of any asset, represented in the form of expenses in respect of a transaction, or in relation to an event or occasion. Event or occasion will include these marriage or your other events, or an entry or entries in books of account. तो सर यहाँ तो सब कुछ कवर हो गया, शेयर कैपिटल भी कवर हो गया, ये भी कवर हो गया, वो भी कवर हो गया. तो स्कोप ऑफ 147 is endless now. It is enlarged to a considerable extent. So therefore, that is the thing which
Sir, इससे बचने का रास्ता फिर, I mean, what is the way out? What is the solution?
Priyank, I for one would only say, sir, when I qualified as a CA in the year 1973, the highest rate of taxation in this country was 97.775%. Seniors and elders sitting here would agree to that. I had occasion, जब मैं 73-74 में एक दो computation बनाए मैंने, so if I earn 100 rupees during the year, my tax liability on account of income tax, wealth tax was at times exceeding 100 rupees. So one could understand कि भैया उस समय tax evasion या tax चोरी का लोगों के दिमाग में आता था. But now that your taxation rates have been reduced to 15, 20 and 25%, I mean, with great respect, it is sensible, it is advisable not to indulge in. See, in one sentence, I would only put avoid evasion, adopt avoidance. I mean, what I am trying to submit, you reduce your taxation liability by virtue of the planning, by virtue of the legal provisions which are there in the statute, but don't evade taxes. Well, that was just my feeling. And tax planning or consultancy has got two events. One is tax planning at the stage before you have entered into a transaction or before you venture to do certain transaction. In that situation, my advice would be, then we tax advisors, we advocates and chartered accountants should be very strictly giving advice, a conservative advice, the advice which is correct as per the statutory provisions. But there is a second stage when the event has happened, when the murder has been done, when there is a levy, a penalty or initiation of penal provisions against the SSE, then in that case, we should try to take advantage of these reported decisions on tax planning, which is being exerted by the tax experts. So our role should be, और देखिए कोई भी क्लाइंट जब तक अपने सीए या एडवोकेट से कंसेंट नहीं लेता है तब तक वो ट्रांजैक्शन नहीं करता है नया टाइप का. With great respect, I would say no client would dare to do anything without your or my consent. They will come to you, they will ask you. आप अगर ना करेंगे तो वो बोलेगा सर आप भैया मना कर रहे हो, वो तो उनसे तो बात किए थे, वो तो कर रहे हैं, अब वो कैसे कर रहे हैं. So the ball is always thrown in your and my court to find a way out for the client. So how strict or how disciplined we are when we are advising them at a planning stage, I think that matters much. देखिए लॉन्ग रन में आपकी सही एडवाइस अगर दी है तो दे विल ऑलवेज कम टू यू. आई गिव यू वन एग्जांपल हियर, अभी आउट ऑफ द कॉन्टेक्स्ट. देयर वाज ए जयपुर ट्राइब्यूनल डिसीजन इन द केस ऑफ 40 AIA. तो उसमें बोला था कि taxes paid during the year are not affected. In that decision, the Jaipur Tribunal came out with a decision that whatever you have paid during the year, 40 AIA इसमें applicable ही नहीं है, even if it is without deduction. But whatever is outstanding, only on that it is applicable. People came to me at that stage. मैं बोला भैया, I mean, with greatest respect, Jaipur Tribunal तो बहुत अच्छा decision है, but the legislative intention can never be like that कि जो payment हो गया उसको तो बाद दे दो, जो unpaid है खाली उस पे 40 AIA लगाओ. Finally, Supreme Court ने verdict दे दिया कि it is applicable on both the whether paid or payable. अगर आपने TDS नहीं काटा है तो 40 AIA will come into play. Therefore, what I am trying to submit, when these extreme cases of tax planning, which is just contrary to the law, which is just contrary to the legislative intent, are likely to see results like this. Therefore, you should not be extreme in these situations. And now that penalty for misreporting is 200% of the this thing, then you should also consider that. Anyway, friends, let us come to other proposals or other changes which have been proposed by this finance Bill 2022.
I'll just take one more moment, sir. I
Yeah.
also request Sanjay Da is here, Sushil sir is here, a lot of other veterans are here. If you could, add your valuable inputs as well. I mean,
I
if
don't
there is
mind. I will
something,
be happy.
yeah,
It will
Sanjay
be
Da
a
is.
pleasure for me.
If there is anything on, any particular topic, if Sanjay Da, Sushil Da, if anyone would like to anything, I mean, just add anything. Yes, Sanjay Da.
Just I was curious, Gupta ji, just
बोलिए.
I was curious to know in the updated return, when 143 to notice is received, then you are debarred from filing the updated return.
Right.
In that manner, only 9 months window is there.
Yeah.
Suppose, because next year by June, 140 notice has to come.
Right.
Only in case 143 to notice does not come, you can file this is only one situation, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what pending means, even you file the return, assessment becomes pending. If you don't stretch too far, let us suppose that is not the pending, unless it 143 notice comes. So suppose you file the updated return after 1 year, and when 143 notice doesn't come, so assessing officer will make the assessment.
Yes.
And before filing the updated return, you have to pay tax according to your tax calculation.
Yes.
And suppose in that assessment, updated return assessment, it makes the assessment under 68, because more likely these will be undisclosed income which assessee want to bring in as additional income. So he will again put the interest of 78% plus surcharge, blah blah blah, and top of that 20%, 5% tax penalty. Then further assessee will be asked to pay the tax beyond the tax he has already paid.
Sir, देखिए, once you file an updated return, the obligation on the assessee, if it discloses certain income which is to be assessed under 68, 69, 69 A, B, C or D, then he should suo moto go as per the tax rates applicable in his case under 115 BBE, because 115 BBE में भी दो तरह का taxation contemplated है.
Correct.
You voluntarily file your return disclosing your income under 68, 69 A, B, C or D and pay tax as per 115 BBE, तब आपके ऊपर वो पेनल्टी और वो सब चीजें नहीं लगेंगी.
तब तो सर ये जितने भी फाइल होंगे अपडेटेड रिटर्न सब तो 68, 69 में एडिशन होने हैं.
नॉट नेसेसरीली.
तो फिर ये प्रैक्टिकली पॉसिबल सक्सेस होगा, क्योंकि मतलब आज 25% टैक्स उस पर भी दे, 68% का ही 68 में 100% टैक्स ऐसे ही पेएबल है. Just I am throwing one question.
I agree. One will have to make a calculation to find out how much he is affected, whether he wants to buy piece or not, because non-furnishing of a return, and when it comes by way of a notice between 3 to 10 years when the income level exceeds 50 lakhs, तब आपको जो penalty, prosecution, interest and other provisions which will follow, I mean, one will have to take a case-to-case decision on
naturally
by making the calculations that अभी कर रहे हैं तो क्या liability है, अगर हम नहीं करते हैं, if I'm inviting 148 notice because my figure is exceeding 50 lakhs and because it is within 3 to 10 years, so you will have to take a conscious.
So he will be, matlab, his income whatever he declare, he will pay 100% tax, but he will save with the penalty and the prosecution. That's
yes, all. Very much. और 68, 69, 69 इसमें भी मेरा एक submission है. Income which is assessed as business income, that is not an income under 68. Correct?
That वो तो ठीक है.
उसमें हमारे 115 BB का और एडिशनल वो 78% और वो सब में हम नहीं.
सर वो डिसाइड करेगा ना एसएससी ऑफिसर. आप तो बोलेंगे बिजनेस इनकम.
ये नहीं क्वेश्चन. देखिए, मच विल डिपेंड. आज सपोज करिए मेरा स्टॉक्स वैल्यूएशन में अंडर वैल्यूएशन था,
तब ठीक है.
यू फॉलो. अब हम देख रहे हैं टू बाई पीस की मैंने 10 करोड़ का स्टॉक 6 करोड़ दिखाया था, तो मैं अगर 4 करोड़ डिक्लेयर करता हूं तो अंडर वैल्यूएशन ऑफ क्लोजिंग स्टॉक इज वेरी मच ए पार्ट ऑफ माय बिजनेस ऑपरेशंस एंड that has to be added as my income from business. That cannot be added as income from other sources under 68, 69 ABCD. So under valuation. So likewise, if I make out a case and if I substantiate that what is being offered is nothing but a business income, then in my humble submission that may not be attracted. लेकिन जो unrecorded है, जो unexplained investments है या unexplained cash credit है, which is squarely falling under itna, and that is not related to my business. वो sir, with great respect, that depends on how you represent, how you submit, how you have your facts represented. That will be in that. Yes, Priyank.
Sir, I think yes, you can continue. If anyone wants to add anything, please unmute yourself, and you're absolutely free to ask a question or add anything that you wish to. Yes, sir.
I think let me complete. Let us keep 15-20 मिनट बाद अपने आधा घंटा खाली क्वेश्चन आंसर के लिए रख लेंगे तो दैट विल बी बेटर. अदरवाइज क्या होगा, की चीज में हम लोग बहुत टाइम लगा देंगे.
ठीक है सर, नो वरीज, थैंक यू.
अच्छा, वर्चुअल डिजिटल एसेट, लास्ट 2-3 महीने से टीवी पे, न्यूज़पेपर्स में ये क्रिप्टो करेंसी, बिटकॉइंस और इसको लेके बहुत न्यूज और मैसेजेस आ रहे थे कि गवर्नमेंट शुड डू समथिंग ऑन दैम, शुड पेनलाइज और शुड डू. बट फाइनली व्हाट हैज बीन डन, they have accepted these virtual digital assets as an asset class, and they have inserted a specific section 115 BBH wherein 115 BBH wherein they have clearly stated that whatever income which arise on the transfer of a virtual digital asset will be taxed at the rate of 30% plus cess or surcharge. That is section 115 BBH effective 1/4/22. So any transfer of a asset, virtual digital asset will, and when you compute the income arising on transfer of such, what can be reduced from the sale proceeds is only the cost of acquisition. No expenditure, no loss, no deduction of any expenses can be done. So from the gross sale consideration, what can be reduced is only the cost of acquisition. That is about 115 BBH. Then on the part of the person who is the transferee or who is the buyer of this virtual digital asset and who makes payment or gives you the consideration, that on that consideration a TDS at the rate of 1% is proposed as per the new section 194 capital S, which is effective from 1st July 22. So therefore any consideration paid or credited on or after 1/4/22, the TDS of 1% is arises on this ITNA. Now on the lines of 194 IA, when you buy an immobile property exceeding 50 lakhs of rupees, 1% TDS is to be deducted. And there the buyer does not need to have an TAN. He can straight away fill up a form 26 QB while making the payment, and that is the end of everything. That is the challan, that is the return. Even you don't need to furnish a TDS return for that matter. So on the similar lines, provisions are likely to be made in the rules to be prescribed for this proposed section 194S, that the buyer need not have a TAN in this case, and they can straight away. And the no TDS if the consideration is less than 50,000. I mean, up to 50,000 consideration, there is no TDS when it is paid by a specified person, and when it is paid by a person other than a specified person, then 10,000. Now, who is a specified person has been defined here. That a specified person means an individual on HUF whose total turnover from business or profession does not exceed 1 crore in the immediately preceding previous year in case of business, and in case of profession, it should not exceed 50 lakhs of rupees. Now, that is non-tax audit assessees, individuals and HUF are specified persons, and they can make payment up to 50,000 without TDS deduction. And those cases where I don't have income from business or profession, then they are also considered as specified persons by the definition. Another aspect which has been stated here is the transfer can be by virtue of two methods. One is by sale and one is by making a gift. Now, it has been included in section 56(2)(10) also, that if you make a gift of a virtual digital asset to a relative as specified in 56(2)(7), then in that situation there is no taxability. So Transferring to a relative as specified in 56(2)(7), no taxability. Then transferring to a non-relative, and if the consideration is below 50,000, no taxability. Now, एक question ये arise होगा. Suppose I transfer virtual digital assets of say 1 crore rupees to a relative, or 50 lakhs, or more than 50,000, obviously. So अब question आएगा कि taxability in the hands of recipient at what rate? That will be on the applicable slab rates to that recipient individual, and not at 30% as stated. Because once it is an income under 56(2)(10), it is to be taxed as income from other sources and to be taxed at slab rate and not at 30%. So that is all about virtual digital assets. Then friends, another important and very important another example of nullification of the Supreme Court decisions is amendments to the provisions of section 170 and insertion of new section 170 capital A and insertion of new section 156 capital A. You know, business reorganization in the case of amalgamation, in the case of merger, and in the case of demerger, there was a good amount of disputes and benefits were being taken by the assessees. आप amalgamate करते हो, so you submit a scheme of amalgamation to the High Court or the NCLT as the case may be. And in that situation, there is always an appointed date that with effect from the date from which this amalgamation or merger or demerger will be effective. And there is always, and from that appointed date, the date of final order from the NCLT or from the High Court, as the case may be, there is a good amount of period lapses. 1 साल, 1.5 साल, 2 साल तक का भी lapse होता है. But the moment you receive an order, then you need to have your accounts revised from the appointed date. And then, so that was creating a problem to the successor assessees. And successor assessees used to argue before the courts that your issuing of notices on a predecessor which is no more in existence. So on a non-existent entity, notices were being issued by the income tax department. So those have been held to be illegal or void. And the very good decision of the Honorable Supreme Court is in the case of Maruti Suzuki, reported in 416 ITR page 613. That is a Supreme Court decision. That if there is a merger or demerger or amalgamation, and if that fact has been intimated to the department, and thereafter still in spite of that, if a notice is received on a predecessor which is no more in existence on the date of issue of notice, that is not even saved by 292B. So that is a nullity. So that was now to nullify the effect of these decisions and to make the successor eligible to go for revising its return. The provisions have been proposed to be amended here by insertion of subsection 2A in the case of in section 170 to provide a deeming provision in order to save and validate the proceedings and to hold that the assessment or other proceedings pending or completed on the predecessor in the event of a business reorganization to be held in the hands of the successor. So it will be presumed that whatever proceedings, whatever decisions are taken post the appointed date will be deemed to have been taken in the hands of the successor. Now another question or another problem which was being faced, that since there is a time gap between the appointed date and the date of the order, how the successor can incorporate and have the benefit of revision of its income tax returns. So that was not practically feasible in most of the situations. Now they propose to insert section 170 capital A, wherein a provision has been made that a modified return can be furnished by the successor company within 6 months from the date of the order, from the end of the month in which the order of the amalgamation, merger or demerger is received. That can be done. And another important amendment has been made. Now that people go under this IBC code 2016 before the NCLT, wherein the demands, tax demands of tax, interest and payment or of a fee or penalty are substantially reduced by the adjudicating authority under IBC. Now, in case such reduction is done in the various tax demands of a particular company or an SSE, then the department is empowered to issue a notice of demand under 156 capital A at the reduced figure which has been adjudicated by the authority under IBC 2016. So वो 156 A में जो demand जाएगी, that will be considered as a notice of demand under 156. So these amendments are important from the angle of the revenue as also from the angle of the SSE, depending upon the facts and circumstances of each case. Now I take up the amendments which have been carried out in section 43B. Friends, 43B, the existing provisions, when you make borrowings from a state financial corporation or a public financial corporation or institution, or when you make borrowings from a deposit taking NBFC or systematically important non-deposit taking NBFC, or when you are borrowing from scheduled banks or a cooperative banks. 43B has three clauses. Clause D relating to financial institutions, clause DA for deposits from NBFC, and clause E for deposits from scheduled banks or cooperative banks. In these three situations, the interest which is to be paid or which is payable to these institutions or banks, as the case may be, shall be deemed to be will be allowed as a reduction in the computation of income in the year in which these payments are actually made, as per 43B. And 43B has also inserted explanations for these clauses to say that if you convert such unpaid interest or outstanding interest into a loan or a debenture or any other instrument, and not actually paying, that will not amount to actual payment, and that will be hit by 43B provisions. Now, abhi kya hua hai? In case of Aqua Technologies Limited, the matter has traveled up to Supreme Court. That is 436 ITR page 582. Now, in 436 ITR 582 Aqua, what was there? The facts were that they were outstanding running into hundreds of crores of rupees. Now, outstanding interest was converted into debentures as per the terms of the agreement, as per the understanding arrived at between the lender and the company Aqua. And they acknowledge that so far as now this outstanding interest should be treated and considered as the actual payment of interest. When that stands paid, now press issue of debentures is there. Now, right now, matter has traveled to Supreme Court, and Supreme Court has endorsed the observations that when this debenture, this outstanding interest has been repaid by way of issue of debentures, that is nothing but a constructive payment, and that is an actual payment under section 43B. Now, the legislature felt, the revenue felt that no, this is bypassing the clear-cut intentions which we have narrated. You have not paid, you have converted into a loan or borrowing. So therefore, I am sorry, you will have to suffer this disallowance. Now they have inserted an explanation in section 43B to clarify that no, any conversion into any debentures is also not permitted. That will not be treated as a actual payment within the meaning of 43B. So this is another classic example. Now, once again, the notes on clauses and the memorandum explaining the provisions of the finance bill clearly say that these provisions are with effect from 1/4/23, effective assessment year 23-24. Therefore, till assessment year 22-23, 22-23, according to me, Aqua will continue to be a good law. That is not a bad law. If you read Vatika Township decision of the Supreme Court, थोड़ा डिटेल में पढ़िए उसको, उसमें clearly लिखा है कि to know the legislative intent, you need to read the memorandum explaining the provisions of the finance bill. And if that says that it is effective from a particular year, it is effective from that year. You cannot read retrospective into that. Vatika Township has further gone to say that retrospectivity cannot be read into if it is of an adversarial nature. Abhi आइए sir, a very interesting amendment and a very far-reaching amendment in relation to section 68. Sir, 68 में prior to Finance Act 2012, prior to Assessment Year 13-14, the law was that you need to prove the identity of the lender or the person who given you the money, the genuineness of the transaction, and the credit worthiness of the party giving you the money or the share subscriber, as the case may be. If you are able to fulfill these three parameters, no addition under section 68 should be or can be made. तो इसमें क्या होता था? Suppose I have borrowed certain money from SSE A, तो SSE A अगर identifiable है, if the transactions have been routed through account pay, check or banking other banking modes, if he has furnished his return, if he has reflected in his accounts, then invariably it was held by courts and tribunals that I have discharged my owners. Odisha Corporation Supreme Court 159 ITR. In that decision, what had happened? I had furnished the GIR number of the SSE who had given me the money. I have given the details, confirmation of the account. तो उसमें department ने 131 issue किया था, and that 131 remain unserved. So addition was made. The matter traveled to the Supreme Court in this Odisha Corporation's decision. The Supreme Court in Odisha Corporation stated by the onus on the part of the SSE stands discharged. He has given you the name, address, and GIR number of the concerned SSE with whom he had taken this money. And therefore, even if 131 has come back, it was incumbent on the income tax department to go to his assessing officer or find out from his assessment records whether it is a genuine or not, or this or that. But so far as the borrower SSE is concerned, onus stands discharged. Abhi, we have the benefit of Calcutta High Court decision in the case of Dataware Limited. Now, Dataware Limited, Calcutta High Court has been very specific. They have stated that if the SSE has furnished his return, the lender or the person giving the money or the subscriber, and if you have accepted that return, then it is for you to peek into his returns to find out his credit worthiness or his sources or his other things. You cannot come and penalize me. We have the benefit of lovely exports in case of itna. तो इन सबको हिट करने के लिए फाइनेंस एक्ट 2012 with effect from assessment year 13-14 एक प्रोवाइजो इंसर्ट किया इन सेक्शन 68. Now 68 के प्रोवाइजो में क्या बोला? If you receive any money on account of share capital, share application or share premium from a resident subscriber, then in that case the person subscribing also has to discharge his sources. Friends, आप इसका explanation आप जो प्रोवाइसो को आप पढ़ेंगे, that makes a very interesting reading. Now I'll just read it for you. 68 निकालिए ना. Now 68 का प्रोवाइसो देखिए क्या बोलता है. Provided this is effective assessment year 13-14. Provided that where the SSE is a company, not being a company in which the public are, that is closely held companies, and the sum so credited consists of share application, money, share capital, share premium, or any such amount by whatever name called. Any explanation offered by such SSE company shall be deemed to be not satisfactory unless, now you listen carefully, unless the person being a resident in whose name this credit is recorded in my books of the company, the person also offers an explanation about the nature and source of sum so credited. So a literal reading, a strict reading of the provision is that the person in whose name that credit lies has to come and offer an explanation. Sir, मैं आपसे एक practical बात करता हूँ. You are having a closely held company. You are running some business, or you have some project or idea in mind, but you are short of funds. And you consider कि नहीं सुशील प्रांशुखा जी इज ए मैन ऑफ फाइनेंसर, उनके पास आप जाते हैं, अपना दिखाते हैं मेरा ये कंपनी है, ये प्रोजेक्ट्स है, सर वुड यू फाइनेंस मी? हाँ, सुशील जी बोलते कितना चाहिए, आप बोलते हो 5 करोड़ रुपए चाहिए, यस आई एम रेडी टू गिव यू। द मोमेंट ही सेज रेडी टू गिव यू, आप बोलते हैं ठीक है सर आप ऐसे ऐसे करिए, बट आई वुड यू विल हैव टू कम टू माय एओ, you will have to give your evidences of your sources of income, आप वो भी बताइए आपके पास कहाँ से आया, क्या आया। सुशील प्रांशुखा जी बोलेंगे भैया एक कप चाय पीजिए और फिर आप अपने घर जाइए, मैं अपने घर जाता हूँ। मेरा कहने का मतलब है practically when you go to a lender or a financer, you cannot or you should not ask कि भैया आपका क्या sources है, and even if you ask by subsequently during assessment अगर 131 या 133(6) होता है तो those persons can give a reply in a limited way. They may not be interested in giving the minutest details of their own sources of funds. अच्छा, अब now come to the proposed amendments in 68 by Finance Act 22. Finance Act 22 बोलता है कि भैया आपका तो शेयर कैपिटल और शेयर प्रीमियम और शेयर एप्लीकेशन पे ये प्रोविजन एप्लीकेबल है। नाउ दे से दैट इफेक्टिव 1/4/23, दैट इज विद इफेक्ट फ्रॉम असेसमेंट ईयर 23-24, फॉर एनी लोन और बोरोइंग द पर्सन इन हुज नेम द लोन और बोरोइंग इज देयर हैज टू कम एंड एक्सप्लेन हिज सोर्सेस। अगर वो नहीं करते हैं तो अच्छा, इसमें देखिए ये बजट का मेमोरेंडम एक्सप्लेनिंग द प्रोविजन, जरा आप ठीक से सुनिए क्या बोलता है। सॉरी, I'll read one para 5 of this proposed amendment. It is proposed to amend the provisions of 68 of the Act. अब आपसे मैं एक बात करता हूं, if you go to a actual financer, if you go to the actual lender, he may not like कि आप उनसे ये बोले कि आप अपना sources बताइए, अपना details दीजिए, but if you go to a name lender, if you go to an entry provider, he would be gladly willing to give you all the details, evidences and documents. हाँ, मेरा बुक आप बैलेंस शीट भी ले जाइए, आप मेरा मेमोरेंडम भी ले जाइए, आप मेरा आईटी रिटर्न का कॉपी भी ले जाइए, बैंक स्टेटमेंट का कॉपी, they will give you all because उनको तो बिजनेस चाहिए। Now that is further substantiated by what is stated in the memorandum. A memorandum para 5 I am reading on page 62 of the memorandum explaining the provisions of the finance bill. It is proposed to amend the provisions of 68 of the Act so as to provide that the nature and source of any sum, whether in the form of loan or borrowing or any other liability credited in the books of the SSE, shall be treated as explained only if the source of funds is also explained in the hands of the creditor or entry provider. So they are recognizing the genuineness of an entry provider. अगर entry provider का source prove हो गया तो वो entry भी genuine loan or borrowing मानी जाएगी. That is not from my mouth. This is what is stated in the memorandum. In the hands of, however, the additional onus of proof satisfactorily explaining the source in the hands of the creditor would not be applying if the creditor is well-regulated entity, जो venture capital fund or venture capital company. वहाँ तो ठीक है, समझ में आता है. But now you are recognizing the legality and validity of an entry provider. अगर entry provider source बता दिया और वो ठीक है या वो आप बता सकते हो तो entry provider भी legitimate हो गया. Are you encouraging the loans and borrowings from jama kharchi people or entry providers, or do you want it to be genuine from the sir? पहले क्या था कि if I have explained that I have taken loan from Mr. Sushil Pransukha, who is a income tax assessee, who has given me from banking channels, and this is his confirmation. तो आपको जो इंक्वायरी करना है आप वहां से करिए. तो एस हस्तिमल, the age old decision of the Honorable Madras High Court, क्या बोला था कि source of source is not to be inquired into. Now source of source for share capital was introduced by 13-14 से 10 साल बाद इन्होंने loans और फिर इसके बाद ये जब loans other than share capital होता था तो judicial view of the courts and tribunals was that in case of other than share capital, still source of source is not required. Only the first source needs to be explained. अभी तो इन्होंने हर चीज में source of source का बात कर लिया. तो litigation is going to mount up. ये लोग जो बोलते हैं हम सिंप्लीफाई कर रहे हैं, हम लिटिगेशन को रिड्यूस करते हैं, विद रिस्पेक्ट आई डोंट एग्री. दिस इज गोइंग टू इंक्रीज अकॉर्डिंग टू मी. So this is all about 68 friends. अभी आइए 14A पे. 14A, disallowance of expenditure incurred for earning exempt income. Friends, there is a CBDT circular number 5, dated 11th February 2014. Now this circular says that even if you have not earned any exempt income, I mean, neither the income is not accrued during the year, nor the income has been received by you during the year, but you have incurred certain expenditure incurred for earning such income, that needs to be disallowed as per this circular. But a reading of section 14A, that expenditure incurred in relation to exempt income has been interpreted and has been verdicts have been issued by various high courts across the country, that in absence of an exempt income, there cannot be a disallowance under 14A. Friends, abhi issue aata hai कि when there is a CBDT circular which is binding on the revenue officials, and when there is a decision of a high court or a Supreme Court taking a view contrary to what is stated in the CBDT circular, which should prevail. Friends, only this morning I was arguing a case before the tribunal where on identical issue I had to, the CBDT circular was against me, but the court decisions were favoring me. So I relied on a Supreme Court decision in the case of Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, which is reported in 243 ITR, page 808 Supreme Court, Hindustan Aeronautics. Therein it has been clearly stated that if as per the CBDT circular something is not allowable or disallowable, but on identical facts, a High Court or a Supreme Court subsequent to the issue of that circular has taken a view against what is stated in the CBDT circular, then the CBDT circular will not prevail. The decisions of the High Court or Supreme Court will prevail. That is the verdict of the Supreme Court in Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, 243 ITR 808. So abhi 14A में amendment कर दिया इन्होंने to say that even if you have not incurred any exempt income, that still that will be disallowed in the computation of your हाँ. So इसमें क्या बोला इन्होंने, what is the explanation, in which form it has been narrated. अब आप अगर 14A का explanation पढ़ेंगे तो it will give a feeling as if it is from retrospective effect. Now what is that 14A explanation, वो मैं आपको पढ़ के बता रहा हूँ. One second, friends. Yeah. Now, the explanation says to provide that notwithstanding anything to the contrary contained in said act, for the purpose of computing the total income, no deduction shall be allowed in respect of expenditure incurred in relation to income which does not. तो इसमें एक explanation जो insert किया है, to insert an explanation to clarify that notwithstanding anything to the contrary contained in the act, the provision of the said section shall apply and shall be deemed to have always been applied in a case where income not forming part of the total income has not accrued or arisen or has not been received during the previous year relevant to assessment year, and the expenditure has been incurred during the same previous year in relation to such income not forming part of the total income. तो इन्होंने जो explanation insert कर दिया, that is precisely on the lines of that CBDT circular which was issued in the year 2014 to nullify the decisions of the various high courts and tribunals wherein a view has been taken कि in absence of exempt income there cannot be a disallowance under 14A. तो इसको पढ़ के तो ये लगता है कि ये भी retrospective effect है. यहाँ पर if we read the memorandum explaining the provisions of the finance bill, So they have been very specific. They have been very 68. छोड़ दीजिए उसको. So there it has been specifically stated that these provisions are applicable with effect from assessment year 1/4/22 and from assessment year 22/23. So going by the verdict of Vatika Township, wherein this is very clearly and amply explained, it can be safely argued that till assessment year 21/22, there cannot be an applicability of these amended provisions. That is very clear. So that is 14A. Then friends, Priyank, would you want me to go in question and answers, or should I continue with my discussions?
Sir, how much time do you think will you take for the discussion?
मेरा तो टाइम आप 1 घंटा भी हम बोल सकता हूँ, लेकिन ऐसा नहीं हो कि बाद में आप बोलो कि अब तो टाइम हो गया, बंद करिए. अगर क्वेश्चन आंसर करना है, I am ready. Otherwise, I can continue with what I want to do.
सर, आप ऐसा कर सकते हैं, we can open the floor for question answers for some time. अगर question answers आ जाते हैं तो ठीक है. Suppose we have enough time at the end of the question answers as well, then you can again continue with it.
We don't have any issue.
So, sir, just to start off with, I would be failing in my duties if I don't, recognize some of the prominent professionals who joined us today evening for this group discussion. Sanjay Da is here, Ketan Bhaiya is here, Sushil Bhaiya, Rakesh Jain Bhaiya, Ram Avatar Bhaiya, BL Gang sir, Pramod Ben Uncle is here, Ajay Mitruka Bhaiya, Anil Anchalia Bhaiya, Bhai Tauji Kamal Singh Singhi ji is here, Sahib Singh Chaudhary, CS Samarth Surana has joined us from Delhi just for this discussion. So I would open the floor for question answers. If anyone has any questions, you can ask. Sir, just one question that, if there is anything which is not related to the budget, can that be asked as well? If you don't have any doubt with that?
If I don't have any objection, if I can instantly react, I'll answer. If I am not able to react, I'll say I cannot reply.
Sure. No worries, sir. So Rajesh Kumar Rajgadia has raised his hand. Rajesh, you can ask a question. Yeah.
Yes, my question is in relation to section 194R, that is for TDS on benefits for arising out of business and profession.
Right.
My question is that it says that any benefit or perquisite arising out of business or profession, whether convertible into money or not. The main intention should be that what we are distributing it as freebies or the tours, etc. But whether target incentives given at the end of the year will be covered by this, whether other benefits in the nature of discounts or rebates will be covered by this.
Sir, I'll take you to this. First, I'll give you this the 194R खोला है क्या? देखिए 194R makes very interesting reading.
Yeah.
आप इसको आप पढ़िए तो इसमें आपको पता चलेगा. The first proviso to 194 I am reading.
Yeah.
Provided that in a case where the benefit of perquisite, as the case may be, is wholly in kind.
Okay.
If the benefit or perquisite is 100% in kind, say foreign tour, say a Maruti car, say a city car, depending upon on achievement of the targeted sales figure, say 100 crore or 50 crore or 10 crore, depending upon what is the nature of item, steel, cement, textiles. All these companies have these sales promotion schemes, correct? Or partly in cash and partly in kind.
Okay.
So the benefit of perquisite has to be wholly in kind, or partly in cash or partly in kind.
Yeah.
But if the benefit or perquisite is 100% in kind, that is not contemplated by 194R. Have you understood?
Yeah. So
far as the trade discounts are concerned, friends, already we have plethora of decisions going on 194H that unless and until this commission tab hoga when there is a principal and agency relation, number one.
Yes.
Then it is a case of a principal to principal. It is nothing but a reduction from the sales price. So discount के case में I also had couple of cases to argue where we had successfully argued that trade discount given cannot be a subject matter of deductibility under 194H when it was arguable for commission. तो यहाँ भी it need to be, देखिए क्या होता है, फॉरेन टूर लोग ऑफर करते हैं, व्हीकल्स ऑफर करते हैं, और सर्टेन गिफ्ट्स इन काइंड कि आपको रेफ्रिजरेटर मिलेगा, आपको ये मिलेगा, डिपेंडिंग अपॉन, आई मीन फ्रॉम कंपनी टू कंपनी, फ्रॉम दिस थिंग. नाउ cash discount question is coming on the screen. Cash discount also, according to me, because if it is wholly in cash, then is strict reading of the provision, the 194S may not be applicable. It has to be either wholly in kind or it has to be partly in cash and partly in kind. So that is a strict reading of 194R according.
So to add on this, this benefit, what you said, 100% discount, 100% in kind shall not be covered under 194R.
No, that is very much covered. If it is 100% in kind, because it says is wholly in kind. Wholly in kind is 100% in kind.
Okay.
So that there you have to have the TDS deduction of 10% before you release this. और इसमें ये भी है कि even before you release this in kind thing to the concerned payee or the buyer or your agent or dealer or as customer as the case may be, then in that case you should first ensure that either it is to be paid by him or it is paid by you, and then you recover it subsequently from that person. That is a different aspect, but it must be, provisions specifically say that must be paid, TDS must be, tax must be deducted and paid even before releasing this asset in kind.
Sir, but if we distribute some things not to the customers but to say business associates or others, whether that will also be covered?
Sir, once it is a business, see, obviously if it is below 20,000, then there is no question of TDS provisions coming into picture. But if it is in excess of 20,000 and if it is in the course of carrying on your business or profession, then definitely it is covered.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yes, Saib, you can ask your question.
नमस्कार सर.
Yes, नमस्कार.
हाँ सर, मेरा क्वेश्चन था कि ये बिजनेस रीऑर्गेनाइजेशन के केस में जो मॉडिफाइड रिटर्न फाइल करेंगे,
राइट,
तो जब सक्सेसर फाइल करेगा तो उसको क्या 234 का इंटरेस्ट भी पेमेंट करना पड़ेगा क्या सर?
See, once you file the modified returns, that modified returns is to be filed within 6 months from the end of the month in which the final order is received from the NCLT or the High Court, as the case may be. So if it is furnished within a period of 6 months from the end of the month, I think you have not exceeded the date of that cannot be treated as a late modified return. Therefore, according to me, like in the existing 234A, suppose you receive a 148 notice and you furnish your return within the time which is mentioned in the 148 notice, 234A is not attracted if you furnish the notice return pursuant to receipt of 148 notice within the time permitted in the 134 notice. So according to me, certain clarifications or certain amendments are likely to come in 234A also, which will say if the modified return is furnished within the 6 months time which is permitted as per the proposed provisions, then according to me 234A may not be attractive.
सर, मेरा क्वेश्चन खाली 34A से नहीं है सर, B और C का भी क्वेश्चन आता है, क्योंकि अगर कोई
B or C will be applicable if it is, because if both the incomes taken, because आपकी स्कीम जो जाती है हाई कोर्ट में या NCLT में, उसमें ये स्पेसिफिकली मेंशन रहता है कि ऑन और आफ्टर द अपॉइंटेड डेट व्हाटएवर आर द एसेट्स, व्हाटएवर आर द लायबिलिटीज, व्हाटएवर आर द ऑब्लिगेशंस ऑफ द predecessor company will fall back on the successor company. Therefore, according to me, B and C will definitely be applicable.
नहीं सर, उसमें क्या हो रहा है कि अगर सक्सेसर का कोई TDS कटा हुआ है, उसको तो सक्सेसर अपना रिटर्न में ट्रांसफर कर सकता है, कि वो
Yes.
उसके बाद में मॉडिफाइड करेगा तो प्रोसीडर क्या करेगा, सक्सेसर के रिटर्न में ट्रांसफर हो जाएगा।
Yes.
लेकिन अगर कोई चालान के थ्रू टैक्स लायबिलिटी प्रोसीडर डिस्चार्ज कर चुका है और वो चालान तो प्रोसीडर के पेन में है, अब अगर सक्सेसर रिटर्न फाइल करेगा तो उस चालान को सक्सेसर के हैंड में क्रेडिट लेने का आई डोंट थिंक कि कोई मैकेनिज्म है। तो वो उसको दोबारा पेमेंट करना पड़ेगा, तो फिर ये 234B और C का क्वेश्चन आ जाएगा, जबकि टैक्स ऑलरेडी डिस्चार्ज किया हुआ है।
Sir, what you say, I don't give my agreement to that. The all taxes paid by the predecessor, whether by way of TDS or by way of advance tax or by way of regular payment of tax under separate challans, so after the appointed date, full credit will be given to the successor company when he files the modified return. Already there are judicial decisions on this aspect. I have been handling a case where the TDS credit and other taxes paid by the company which merged, which is no more in existence, the department has not allowed. We are in appeal, but I am 100% reasonably confident that I will get the credit of those taxes. The law there are judicial decisions which have held that the taxes paid on or after the appointed date, for the period on or after the appointed date, all taxes paid by the predecessor company will be available to the successor company.
हाँ, वो बात आप बोल रहे हैं सर, मैं भी आपसे 100% एग्री हूँ, बट जहाँ पे इसको इम्प्लीमेंट के सवाल आता है ना, टीडीएस रिटर्न में वेरी मच मैकेनिज्म है आईकेआई रिटर्न में, बट कैश चालान में नहीं है, तो उसको कैसे करेंगे वो थोड़ा।
सर देखिए, मैकेनिज्म और ये आपका पोर्टल और ये सिस्टम्स, सर आई एम ए नॉन टेक्निकल पर्सन। ये देखिए कहानी हम लोग पिछले 6 महीना से, साल भर से, 2 साल से ये चीज अपने फेस करें। इवन टुडे पीपल आर फेसिंग प्रॉब्लम on various issues. Even our office is facing problem on various aspects. But friends, उसमें मैं ज्यादा competent नहीं हूँ।
Okay, thank you sir. Thank you sir. नहीं, thank you sir.
हाँ, समृत कौन सा? CS समृत सुनाना। समृत कौन सा? You can ask a question.
I would like to ask a question.
Yes. Manish ji? Sir.
Hello, I will like to ask
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Sir, in cases where, say, appointed date is, say, 1st of April 19, say, and the scheme was approved in, say, April 2021. So in those cases, 6 months has from April to now, this is February, 6 months has already gone. So I cannot file my return for this year ended 20 revised return. What will happen in that case?
Sir, in cases where that 6 months period is expired, then the only mechanism available to you is to apply for the severity under the provisions of 119(2)(b), because in a specific case where there is a genuine hardship which is being created, you will have to give why you could not avail the period of 6 months, why you did not go for a revised returns or submission. Even in absence of these provisions, there are certain judicial decisions which have stated that post receipt of the High Court order, I can revise my returns, even where the 139(5) date.
Dalmia power.
There are decisions. So Sushil ji is already telling you. So what I am trying to say, और कहीं कुछ भी नहीं मिले तो हमको 119(2)(b) में सीवियरिटी या कमिश्नर के पास जाके by citing our genuine hardship we can have.
Sir, in case I do not do anything, say I have already filed my returns for both the companies for 2021, already filed my. And
the returns already filed. Once the final order is received, returns filed by the predecessor company for the period after the appointed date will become non-est. वहाँ जो भी आपने फाइल किया है वो सारा आपको यहाँ लेके आना है और यहाँ पर आप फाइल करिए, उसकी सारी टैक्सेस की क्रेडिट लीजिए. Well, that process and scheme has to be made out by looking at the facts of each case as to how to proceed with the proposed amendments or with the existing judicial decisions. These situations have arisen to so many assessees who have gone for amalgamation, merger or demerger, and how they have been addressed by courts and tribunals is before us. But that benefit of taxes paid by the predecessor company or incomes or expenditure of predecessor company is always available to the successor company.
Yes, that is right. That is good. Thank you, sir.
Sir, I just like to tell you that BL Gang sir was my principal, so I have done my articleship under him.
Okay.
So, yes, Samrat, sir, you can ask a question, and then Manish ji, you are next.
Okay, should I start?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much, sir, for providing this opportunity, sir. First of all, मेरा पहला सवाल सर 80JJAA पर है.
बोलिए.
इसमें जो एडिशनल एम्प्लॉइज कोस्ट का जो 30% का डिडक्शन है सर, जिसमें वो 30% और 3 साल की बात करता है, 3 असेसमेंट ईयर, उस सेक्शन को पढ़ने से कौन से 3 असेसमेंट है इसके बारे में वो कुछ नहीं लिखता. तो मैं ये इंटरप्रेट कर रहा हूँ कि ये लाइफ टाइम में सिर्फ 3 साल में अपॉर्चुनिटी मिलेगी हमें अब एडिशनल एम्प्लॉय कोस्ट के 30% का डिडक्शन लेने की. क्या मैं सही इंटरप्रेट कर रहा हूँ सर, या कुछ गलती हो?
I am just reading subsection 1 for you, for the benefit of all of us.
Yes, sir.
Deduction in respect of employment of new employees, where the gross total income of an SSE to whom section 44AB applies includes any profits and gains derived from business. There shall, subject to the conditions specified in subsection 2, be allowed a reduction of an amount equal to 30% of the additional employee cost incurred in the course of such business in the previous year for 3 assessment years, including the assessment year relevant to the previous year in which the said employment is provided. So, sir, 3 assessment years would be year of additional employment, the initial year plus 2 years.
Sir, मैं with due apology आपसे एक छोटा सा निवेदन करना चाहता हूँ.
बोलिए बोलिए बोलिए.
सब्सिक्वेंट ईयर लॉ में एनेक्टमेंट में कहीं भी वर्ड नहीं लिखा है.
That is not required, sir. Kindly again listen. For 3 assessment years.
सर एक चीज और निवेदन करना चाहता हूँ सर.
बोलिए बोलिए बोलिए.
इस पूरी सेक्शन में अगर मैं 3rd ईयर में डिडक्शन क्लेम करूंगा या सब्सिक्वेंट 2nd ईयर में डिडक्शन क्लेम करूंगा, तो उसका कोई मैकेनिज्म डिफाइन नहीं है कि हाउ आई विल कैलकुलेट दैट डिडक्शन, बिकॉज
सर that calculation is done in the year 1 itself. See what you have incurred in say year 1.
Yeah.
में additional employment आया है, वहां आप additional employee cost का 30% calculate कर लीजिए. So that will be year after year for the year 3. There is no calculation to be done in 2nd or 3rd year. 2nd year में जो additional employment अगर है तो उसका fresh अपने को मिलेगा. It is everything is concluded in the 1st year itself.
और सर फर्स्ट ईयर वाले अगर 2nd ईयर में अगर छोड़ के चले जाते हैं तो उतना कम करूं?
नहीं, वो तो इनकी दूसरी कंडीशन है ना कि उनका एम्प्लॉयमेंट इतने दिन कंटिन्यूएशन होना चाहिए, सब्जेक्ट टू सबसेक्शन 2. वी आर नॉट ऑन दैट. आपका पहला क्वेश्चन था कि हम 3 साल क्या करेंगे. 3 साल इज ईयर 1 एंड 2 ईयर सब्सिक्वेंट टू द ईयर 1. एंड ऑफ कोर्स उसके बाद जो कंटिन्यूअस एम्प्लॉयमेंट की जो कंडीशंस हैं और हैं वो रहेंगी, वहां पर वो फुलफिल करनी पड़ेंगी अपने को. If I am missing on any of the conditions, then that is a fact of a particular case. They are debarring me from that.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome. Welcome.
Thank you, sir. Manish bhaiya.
Yes. Very good evening, sir. Myself, Manish Kedia from Jamshedpur.
Yes, Manish. बोलिए.
हाँ, sir. I would like you request you to kindly throw light on the first proviso to section 149B.
149B.
B, हाँ. और दूसरा है कि also sir the amendment which has been made by this Finance Act 2022 in the same proviso.
Sir,
first proviso
149B 149 का जो first proviso है, I will just read it for you in the existing act.
Yes.
Provided that no notice under section 148 shall be issued for any time in the case of a relevant assessment year beginning on 1st day of April 21. If such notice could not have been issued at that time on account of being beyond the time specified in 149(1)(b, as they stood immediately before the commencement of Finance Act. Correct? इसका क्या interpretation है? अगर 31/3/21 को कोई नोटिस 148 की नहीं इश्यू हो सकती थी एज पर दी ओल्ड प्रोविजंस, देन फॉर दैट पर्टिकुलर ईयर इवन आफ्टर 1421 अगर वो 31/3/21 को मेरे पास वो नोटिस नहीं आ सकती थी, तो अब बिकॉज इट हैज बीन एक्सटेंडेड टू 3 to 10 years, that notice cannot travel to me. That is the interpretation which is to be given to this first proviso. Now, as because the search assessments contemplated under 153A, which were to be done as per 153A read with 153B and 153C, तो वो भी सर्च के no search assessment can be done under those provisions on or after in respect of searches initiated on or after 1421. इसलिए इसमें along with 148 इन्होंने 153A, 153B और 153C को भी ऐड कर दिया कि ऑन और आफ्टर अगर 31 मार्च 21 को उनमें नोटिसेस नहीं आ सकती थी, तो बाद में आ ही नहीं सकती हैं. Obviously 153A, 153B and C तो एक्ट से ही निकल गया, और searches assessments have to be done here. Therefore, if something could not be done under the old provisions as on 31 cannot be done under the new provision. This is the understanding and explanation for this first provision.
Thank you very much, sir.
I have a couple of questions on digital assets, cryptocurrencies, if I can say that. So sir, cryptocurrencies में there are two things. एक तो वो बोला है कि जैसे suppose if I am to buy a crypto, ठीक है, मेरे को सबसे पहले कोई भी एक प्लेटफॉर्म होता है, वहां पे पैसा ट्रांसफर करना आएगा. सो सपोज अज्यूमिंग मैं 1 लाख रुपया ट्रांसफर करता हूँ, उसमें मेरे को 1% TDS काटना है. ठीक है, 1000 रुपया TDS काट के मैं जमा कर दिया. ठीक है, अब सर होता क्या है नॉर्मल सिनेरियोज में, मैं एक बार पैसा ट्रांसफर कर दिया, उसके बाद आई बाई समथिंग, आई सेल, आई कीप द मनी इन दैट एक्सचेंज ओनली. ठीक है, मैं पैसा वापस नहीं लेता हूँ, वो एक्सचेंज में पैसा पड़ा है, उसी से मैं वापस कुछ खरीद रहा हूँ, बेच रहा हूँ, एंड द ट्रांजैक्शन कीप्स ऑन हैपनिंग, राइट. तो सर TDS एक ही बार कटेगा ना when I am transferring the money. Second stage का कोई वो नहीं है इसमें.
I tell you. See, they have amended the law, but they have not gone into the modus operandi of how to buy, from where to buy. अभी आपके question से एक चीज और आती है. They have come out with the TDS provisions कि 1% TDS काटना है. But sir, TDS काटना है तो किसके नाम से काटेंगे? When I am buying from a platform or from an exchange, should I give the credit to the platform or the exchange? Actual seller तो platform और exchange भी किसी दूसरे को दूसरे seller को लेके आएगा. तो अभी आपने जो बोला है,
पता ही नहीं है कौन बायर है, अमेरिका में या दुबई में कहाँ बैठा है.
तो आपने जो बोला है, it's a genuine and valid problem. So the law on this digital cryptocurrency or bitcoins is going to evolve, and so many changes or amendments or clarifications are likely to come. Because आपको जब TDS में क्या होता है, what happens in case of some companies कि अगर आप incentive provide करोगे तो आपको TDS काटना पड़ेगा, जैसे यहीं पर आया. तो अगर हम अपने experience से TDS का provision करते हैं without knowing who is the payee or without knowing who is the beneficiary to whom the credit will be given of that TDS. So in absence of the identification of the beneficiary, in absence of the payee, there are judicial decisions which have said no TDS liability arises, because TDS को credit तो correspondingly मिलना चाहिए ना किसी को. यहाँ किसको मिलेगा TDS का credit? So according to me, the law on this virtual digital asset, more particularly this TDS, has to be further evolved with reference to the ground realities. कैसे ये operate होगा, किसके नाम से TDS कटेगा, whether the exchange will deduct TDS. जैसे STT है, security transaction tax is levied by the broker who is working on the platform, and that payment is remitted to the STT के return वगैरह stock exchange file करता है. Whether the obligation will be on the stock, according to me, the law as it is worded, it is the buyer or it is the person making the payment of consideration has to deduct. तो अब second question arises, उसकी credit किसको मिलेगी? वो तो अभी जो अगर किसी प्लेटफॉर्म से एग्रीगेटर से हम खरीदेंगे, हम उसको क्रेडिट देंगे क्या? He is not the seller, he is only a mediator, and you don't know the identity of the seller. तो क्रेडिट कैसे मिलेगी सेलर को? एंड दैट हैज टू बी अ रेसिडेंट सेलर. ये तो अभी अक्रॉस द ग्लोब चल रहा है खेला. ये सब प्रॉब्लम्स हैं विद रेस्पेक्ट. हम लोगों ने अभी जो लिखा हुआ उसको डिस्कस किया है, but when it comes to actual practicing these things, lot of issues like one narrated by you are likely to arise.
प्रैक्टिकली एक प्रॉब्लम और था कि जैसे सपोज करिए एक क्लाइंट है वाज who wanted to pay the remuneration in मतलब वो मेरे को बिटकॉइन या कोई भी क्रिप्टो में पैसा देना चाहता था, ठीक है। अब उसका वैल्यूएशन का मैकेनिज्म भी नहीं समझ में आता, बिकॉज अगर सपोज करिए कोई शेयर भी अगर होता तो इट हैज अ क्लोजिंग रेट कि 31 मार्च का एक क्लोजिंग रेट है या 30 जून का या एट पर्टिकुलर डेट। इसमें तो सर मतलब 24 आवर खुला है एक्सचेंज, अलग अलग एक्सचेंजेस में भी अलग अलग प्राइसेस का वो है, तो उसका भी सर वैल्यूएशन का मैकेनिज्म समझना बहुत डिफिकल्ट है कि
wherever they have come out with a valuation of certain shares or securities, they have stated average of the highest or lower rates, or the highest rates or the lowest rate. If there are 3 exchanges, उसमें तीनों में variations होगा. So those things are to be narrated and to be explained or to be clarified by the CBDT by virtue of a clarificatory circulars or notifications, as the case may be. But as of law, it is the fair value on the relevant date that has to be looked into for the purpose. But if when you are making payment to a resident, then this TDS obligation on the amount paid by you, because आपका payment तो rupees में ही होगा. You are getting the digital asset, so TDS is on the amount paid, not on the fair market value.
अभी TDS वाला तो ठीक है, खाली ये वाला में क्वेश्चन था बिकॉज ओवर अ पीरियड ऑफ टाइम में सर्विस प्रोवाइड कर रहा हूँ और बिल मैं करता हूँ से एट अ पर्टिकुलर डेट, तो वो जो मेरे को
your remuneration is being paid in a currency other than rupee. So right. Consideration in kind, the receipt of sale consideration or service consideration in kind has to be valued on the basis of fair market value on the date when you are receiving the consideration. And that should be ideally, if you have accepted that, then that is equivalent to the bill amount which you have raised for rendering that services. I mean, you are indirectly accepting that.
Rakesh Jhunjhunwala ji, you can ask her.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
हाँ जी, मेरे 2 प्रश्न थे जी. एक तो 194R में the phrase used is in exercise of the business or profession. तो मेरी जो रीडिंग है कि B2B जो ट्रांजैक्शन है, business to business, that will be covered if I render it directly to a customer any benefit, even if it is more than 20,000. Suppose someone comes and buys a car from my shop and I offer him freebies more than 20,000. Since that person, if he's an individual and if he's not buying the car for his business and profession, exercise of business, तब तो ये जी मेरे हिसाब से 194R नहीं होना चाहिए. It should be restricted to B2B.
देखिए, when I am selling product to a customer,
हाँ जी,
and so far as giving a benefit of perquisite to that customer is concerned,
इसमें जी by the person who is receiving the benefit, he should be exercising the transaction. The benefit and perquisite arising to him should be from the exercise of business profession by the person who is receiving the benefit.
कहाँ है?
Second line है.
आप बताइए. I am having the.
एक मिनट, just give me a moment. मेरी जो रीडिंग आई ये इसमें है जी, any person responsible for providing to a resident any benefit or perquisite, whether convertible into money or not, arising from a business or the exercise of profession by such a resident.
Right.
By such resident is provide. First line में जो है responsible for providing to a resident.
I concur with what you say. When it is if the person to whom the benefit of perquisite is provided is not exercising, not carrying on any business or profession, then it is not applicable.
वही जो थैंक यू सर.
वैसे भी ये 28(4) जो है ये उसके साथ पढ़ना चाहिए इसको. 28(4) तो उसी के लिए जो एक्सरसाइज ऑफ बिजनेस परक्विजिट.
28(4) भी वही एप्लीकेबल होगा when I receive the benefit in course of carrying on a business.
Correct. So
I agree.
जी दूसरा प्रश्न है, अभी जो बात हो रही थी 149B का जो प्रोविजो है जी.
हाँ जी.
उसमें can I read into it कि this 149B का जो provisional आया is a sort of grandfathering clause कि ये जो 10 साल का इन्होंने अब किया है, that will be applicable only from assessment year 21 onwards and not before 21. 21 के पहले 6 साल ही रहेगा, 3 से 6 साल, और अब जो 10 साल खुलेगा.
Sir, whenever a notice is received today, you should, and if it is for prior to assessment year 21-22, then you examine it, that suppose it was 30, if it has been received on 31st March 21, if it could be issued as per the old law as 31st March 21, then it is a valid, otherwise it is bad in law.
तो इस तो ये इनडायरेक्टली तो यही हो गया ना कि ग्रैंडफादरिंग कि हमारा जो 10 साल का जो खोलने वाला था, आज के दिन नोटिस वो आज से पुराने 7 साल या 8 साल पुराना नहीं दे सकता है जी, नॉर्मल केस में जी.
हाँ, मैं समझ गया. 31/3/21 को हमारे पास नोटिस आ सकती थी से 14 असेसमेंट ईयर 14-15 की.
राइट सर, 6 साल का. हाँ जी,
करेक्ट.
हाँ जी.
14-15 को, आज तो हमारा 10 साल नहीं हुआ है आज के दिन.
हाँ जी.
अगर आज 14-15 की नोटिस आती है तो दैट इज इनवैलिड.
अच्छा, थैंक यू.
सर, रिगार्डिंग 149 एक चीज और पूछना था.
बोलिए
सर. ये जो 149 1B में जो अभी अमेंडमेंट करके जो ये लाया गया ना कि भी अदर देन दिस एसेट्स, एक्सपेंडिचर्स, एंट्री एटसेट्रा.
हाँ.
यहाँ पर earlier in the earlier provision, this B ended with the words or more for that year, 50 lakh rupees or more for that year. For that year word has been removed here. It has been deleted now. So this 50 lakh limit, is it for the entire period of this?
No. 50 lakh limit is year wise.
Yeah. Then why that year word has been deleted?
आप
49(1)(b).
149(1)(b). In 3 years, but not more than 10 years have elapsed from the end of the relevant assessment year, unless the AO has in his possession books of account or other documents or evidence which reveal that the income chargeable to tax, represented in the form of an asset, expenditure, or an entry in books of account which has escaped assessments to or is likely to amount to 50 lakh rupees or more.
Earlier था for that year. Earlier ही में देखिए.
149(1)(b). नहीं, वो ठीक है. ये जो for the purposes of clause B of this subsection, assets shall include so and so, or clause B. What is clause B? Yeah. If 3 years but not more than 10 years have elapsed from the end of the run, unless the AO has in his possession books of account or other documents or evidence which reveal that the income chargeable to tax represented in a which has escaped assessment for that year. और अभी आप बोल रहे हैं 149(1)(b) में is more. नहीं, according to me, even in absence of that, because the notice under section 148 has to be given assessment year wise, and there cannot be a calculation of all the 10 years taken together or 7 years taken together. With great respect,
it should not be, but this is.
I agree, but I still hold the view कि 10-10 लाख का 5 साल में 50 लाख से ऊपर हो गया तो नोटिस.
Logically and legally that is true, but just I was wondering why this has been done actually.
No. I agree, but that cannot be the intention कि उसको that year हटा के वो totality में 50 लाख के ऊपर जाएंगे. Then it will have open a Pandora box of litigation.
Then every case. Okay, sir. Thank you.
Sir, I think we are at 7:16, already 15 minutes past the scheduled time.
मेरे को कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, आप अपना देख लीजिए. If it is done well and good, or if there are some other aspects, I can do that.
सर देखिए, टैक्स ऑडिट का ड्यू डेट 15 तारीख है. एक हफ्ता पहले भी we have 70 participants here. ठीक है, तो हम तो सर कहीं नहीं जाने वाले हैं.
नहीं.
मेरा क्वेश्चन से सर. मेरा क्वेश्चन. हाँ सर.
हाँ मलिक.
सर असेसमेंट 2014 एंड 15 का अभी नोटिस आया है, 142(1) का नोटिस आया है, तो फेसलेस असेसमेंट के अंदर जाए कि रेगुलर में मतलब ऑफिस में जाए, वो क्या करें उसमें?
सर वो तो आपको जो नोटिस आया उसमें लिखा होगा कि ये फेसलेस से आया है कि ये आपके स्पेसिफिक आईटीओ का नाम दे के आया।
दोनों पहले दिया था, आईटीओ का नाम दिया था, फिर फेसलेस का आया है, दोनों चीज ही आया।
तो अभी फेसलेस आया है तो आपको फेसलेस में जाना
सर
पड़ेगा।
एक चीज है कि सर उसमें रिटर्न फाइल ही नहीं था सर, इनकम रिटर्न फाइल।
देखिए these things cannot be answered on the way you are saying, but अगर 14-15 का उन्होंने क्या मांगा है आपसे, whether it is a notice for a regular assessment, whether it is a notice pursuant to reassessment, after having issued 148, 142, one has come to you, I mean पूरा उसका legislative history देखना पड़ेगा, आपका उस साल का क्या status है, then a call can be taken as to how to respond to these notices. You cannot abruptly say, and I can only tell you at present 148, one regular assessment, faceless assessment, reassessments, all are being done faceless. Up on the but notices coming from the investigation wing, notices coming from search and seizure cases, there they are specifically coming from the specifying the ward and name of the concerned officers. There also they are insisting that you should submit it on the portal, and then you can physically also you can go and explain what you want to say. So that will depend. So
Okay,
वो faceless assessment का scheme के basis पे हम लोगों को।
Okay sir, thank you sir.
Thank you, Malik ji. I think, sir, we should keep the time sanctity in mind. We already have the pleasure of 2 hours of listening to you, and I'm sure अपने वापस एक session कर सकते हैं. The topics are endless. The discussion can continue for long. So just a token of appreciation, sir, from the association. This is an e-memento, sir. Is my screen visible, sir?
Yes.
Yes. Right. And for a formal vote of thanks, sir, I would request Sushil Bhaiya. There is no one better than Sushil Bhaiya to tender a formal vote of thanks to SS Gupta, sir. Sushil Bhaiya, if you can do the honors.
Thank you, Priyank. Very well deliberated, very nicely explained all the provisions of the finance bill. Because time was very short, and in this very short time also Gupta ji has gone through all the provisions and made us apprised of all the analyzed in very well manner. Thank you, Gupta ji, on behalf of the association and everybody present amongst us. We have been greatly benefited. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Bhaiya, and thank you so much, sir. I'm sure we'll have the pleasure of listening to you again. And thank you to all the participants. I request all the participants to join tomorrow as well. Today was direct tax, tomorrow is indirect tax. We have Shivani Shah, who will be taking us through the GST provisions, the changes that have been made. A lot of changes are there in the CGST Act and the allied laws. So I request everyone to join tomorrow for the session 5 to 7. Thank you so much, sir. And thank you everyone for joining and giving your valuable time. Thank you.
Okay, Priyank.
Thank you so much. Yes. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Priyank.
Sir.